The religious community, and especially its religious leadership, is incredibly supportive of immigrants and deeply concerned about U.S. public policies across religious traditions and backgrounds. And you know this, right? You see this every day in what you're doing. From my corner of the world, from the work I do, I think it's very interesting what's going on, and seems to me some great stories for reporters. So even though I'm not an immigration expert, at this moment, if you care about the concerns of low-wage workers, you care about immigrants. Those issues, low-wage work and immigrant issues, are just inseparable at this moment in history. So I have 5 new developments on the religion, labor, immigrant front that I think are good stories for you. So I'd like to go through some of those 5 good stories. This thing keeps going on and off. Do you hear that? I don't know what to do. I'll try and first, there is a new sanctuary movement that was launched last year. It has 35 local networks and coalitions of religious leaders and congregations across diverse traditions. Again, it's Catholics, it's mosques, it's Protestants, it's evangelicals, it's Jewish congregations. It's a very diverse coalition at the local level. They have 14 families officially in sanctuary. Now I say officially because in fact there's a number of congregations that are housing undocumented immigrants that don't want to be official. They don't want to be public. But you're seeing a fair amount of that around. But this new sanctuary movement is a little different from the old sanctuary movement simply because the numbers are so great in terms of undocumented immigrants in the country. And so they've had to think about how do we do this work in a different way than the old sanctuary movement in this new sanctuary movement. So in the last year, the new sanctuary movement has trained 1,000 immigrants to tell their stories in articulate ways. In Houston, they wrote a manual and have been distributing a manual for congregations about immigration and what to do in terms of detention issues. In New York, they've got pew cards on immigrant rights that they're distributing. In San Diego, they've been meeting with ICE officials. In Phoenix and Cincinnati, they've been meeting with police chiefs. In Champaign, Illinois, they're organizing legal clinics after services. So they're doing a whole series of kind of supportive kinds of things for immigrants in this new sanctuary movement. I think more stories on that would be terrific. Second new direction here. There's incredible tension, as you know, in the society between immigrants and other low-wage workers, both African-American and white low-wage workers. Because these issues around jobs, and we're in the society, the job market is difficult for workers and wages are in the toilet right now. So there's just real concern and it generates tension. This tension is not new tension. It's tension that has been throughout the history of the United States. And it has often been tension that's been exploited and that employers have pitted workers against one another. We see that regularly around the country. But there are some interesting efforts to sort of bridge those divides. And again, I think they're worthy of your coverage. So in Los Angeles, there's been a new coalition, a Black-Brown Alliance that has formed that engages 20 leading African-American clergy and 20 leading Hispanic evangelical clergy. They're trying to figure out how they both stop some of the Black-Brown youth violence and how do they protect immigrant workers in these raids. In North Carolina, a group of African-American pastors across the state have decided they need to figure out how they join with Hispanic Pentecostal congregations to support farm workers in that state, who again are the subject of exploitation. So I think these new Black-Brown alliances are very interesting, and there's been very little written about them. Third area for coverage are the workplace raids. I know there's been some coverage on the situation in Postville, Iowa with agri-processors. This is the place that was a kosher meat packing plant that the Iowa State's Attorney General just last week, I think, found 9,000 child labor violations in the plant. They charged them in the state. It's a plant that had enormous workplace problems before the immigration raid. And then hundreds of ICE agents descended on the town, pulled out 300 workers, shackled them together, and it was just a tragedy of justice here. And the religious community organized a response. And it was a joint effort primarily between the Catholic community, where the immigrants had run and their families had run for protection, and the Jewish community, who was upset about the working conditions in this kosher meatpacking plant, and so organized a big rally in July, I think.